podcast where we discuss as we do every Thursday, military situation in Ukraine. Here again with Glenn Grant, retired Lieutenant Colonel from the UK, and Dave Sims, retired Lieutenant Colonel, showing the French influence on the American Army. Unfortunate, but we'll live with it. So, Glenn, starting off with you, it's been a bit of a slow week, but I think what both sides are doing in the last week is really important for the next phase, which everyone knows is coming, the Battle of Donbass. What are your thoughts on what's been going on the last week?
Well, as we talked last week, that effectively the whole of the Russian army in that top section of the country, from Kiev upwards north and from Kiev northeast to north of Sumy, the Russian forces have left completely. And what's being found, of course, now is huge devastation and an increased number of atrocities. And there's no question that all the graves have not been found yet, and all the horrors have not been found yet. And more and more stories are coming out of multiple rapes, of just generally nasty things, torture, you name it. The people have been doing it, and in some cases just random killing. So how many people have been killed in this fashion, and what exactly has happened is not clear yet. But it's just every day there's something new comes out. Sumy and Kharkiv, over on the eastern border. The troops are still there. They're not surrounded either, Sumy or Kharkiv. But what they are doing is effectively from the Russian Federation is just bombarding them with artillery and trashing. Kharkiv especially is being trashed all over the place. And the area nearest to the border, which is one of the, what do you want to call it, regions of Kharkiv, which actually holds normally 500,000 people, has actually been devastated. And it's not, it doesn't look quite as bad as Mariupol, but when you actually see the pictures of it and you realize that nearly all the high-rise flats there have been destroyed. And as I said, that was 500,000 people lived in that area. So that's bigger than Edinburgh, as I saw one sort of thing. And so lots of people have left there, obviously, but there's still grandmas and things staying there because they've got nowhere else to go and nobody to look after them and things like that. Both Sumy and Kharkiv are expecting the shelling to continue, but they're also expecting ground attacks at some stage in the near future. And both cities, I talked to people in Sumy today, and they said, we'll win this battle. Kharkiv is a bit more difficult because of the sheer size of the place. So it's quite possible that if Russians get in, they can get into some of the areas of Kharkiv. I mean, it's a huge city. But anyway, let's keep our fingers crossed for that. Dropping south from that, then troops the border between there and the Donbass area. Then Russian troops have been coming through, and they got to a place called Izium during the week, and they've been trying to push away from Izium because that effectively it blocks one of the supply routes up to north, and secondly, it's also sort of a key point for trying to encircle round the back of the Donbass. So that's really, really hard fighting there. Now, from there downwards, you've actually got one enclave into the Russian area, and then down the side of the Donbass, the old trench lines. There are 1/3 of the defense forces are on that line. A lot of them are still in trenches, but in places they've been forced back into villages which are back, but they're hanging on. And this This is one of the areas that people are expecting them to attack. South of that, you've got the Mariupol carries on. The Azov continue to fight, and the Marines who were close to surrendering about 3 or 4 days ago fought through an area of Mariupol so that they could join up with Azov. So now that the Marines and Azov are in one group, still terribly short of ammunition. They keep saying that they can just about hang on. I think they're firing everything that they can steal and capture from the Russians. I don't think they're actually working on anything that's Ukrainian anymore. The troops in the south who came out of Crimea, the top of the canal, Kherson, the town of Kherson, is hanging on. The Ukrainians are getting closer and closer to Kherson. But what they've been doing in Kherson, the Russians have been doing, is basically is trying to dominate the civilian population as much as they can. So they're taking away the people who worked in the government. They are arresting and torturing people that are that do anything that against Russia. But Kherson is still hanging on in terms of lots of blue and yellow flags all over the place. But if it's not relieved soon, then there is a worry that Russia will start with serious atrocities in Kherson if they haven't already started, and we haven't seen some of the things. So, as I mentioned, that Donbass was one of the areas that we could expect them to attack. They could also try and do a pincer movement, which would be reinforcing the troops at Izium at the top, and then trying to push out from the south, from the Kherson area north, to join up and then surround in a pocket the Donbass troops. What has happened during the week is that I believe, but it's gone quiet, that a couple of the brigades are moving south from the Kiev area to this sort of area to fight. I haven't got confirmation of that yet, and I don't know where the general staff would send them. So this is obviously a secret move, because this is quite important, and it will determine where they go. Will determine, obviously, may determine what the Russians do. So that's that. Over the other side, which is Odessa, which still gets shelled every now and rocket attacked every now and again. Siren actually on as we speak, because I've just spoken to my assistant Irakli in Odessa 5 minutes ago, and they're down in the hole hiding. And there is a worry there that the troops in Transnistria have been activated and told to prepare to attack. One presumes attack southeast towards Odessa. I can't imagine them going into the hinterland and doing very much, because they'd run out of fuel within 5 minutes. And three Boy Scouts and a large dog would come and savage them. But if they start going down towards Odessa, then remembering that the brigade that was in Odessa is now the brigade that is now moving towards Kherson from the west. So basically, Odessa is manned by copious amounts of volunteers, like lots. But how they would defend, I don't know. What we do know is obviously there's still some artillery around there, because they've been firing at the ships that came in close. So Odessa is not completely unmanned, but if troops do come out of Transnistria, it just adds a complication to the equation that people don't really need at the moment. So that is. Oh, yes,
you missed something, Glenn.
The ship.
Come on.
The ship. Got to remember the ship. Apparently,
I know you're an Army guy, and Navy stuff doesn't matter, but let's talk about it.
Apparently, we fired a missile from the Odessa area, which hit the largest Russian ship, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, Moskva, which apparently has sunk. How many people sank with it? Nobody knows. Only a few so far have been dropped off in Sevastopol. There was a rumor that 50 or 51 had been picked up by the Turks, but as this ship was actually quite hard up against Odessa, so it wasn't far away from Odessa, I would be surprised if the Turks had picked anybody up, because I don't know what the Turks will be doing up there in a disputed area, especially as they are actually NATO. And if they got into a firefight, it would actually be an attack on a NATO country. So I don't know, but there were 500 plus people on that ship. And as I say, no more than about 20 so far have landed at Sevastopol. Losing this ship changes the dynamic. There are rumors that dynamic in the Black Sea. There are rumors that the ship actually had got nuclear weapons on it, nuclear warheads, which is not good news if they've sunk, because it can make a real mess of the fisheries if they've actually been damaged. So let's hope that they weren't carrying nuclear weapons. But because the Ukrainians have done this, it is really, really, really going to put the pressure now on every Russian ship to not come close to Odessa. So the whole of the Russian fleet is going to have to rethink what it does and how it does it in the next 24 hours. I'm assuming that there are some very, very unhappy people in Moscow, having lost the ship in the Russian Navy that's got the name of Moscow. So this is not going to be an evening of celebration in Moscow. That is absolutely sure. Which does bring me to one other thing that I was going to mention before mentioning Moscow, which is that a lot of planes have been leaving Moscow. Some to the east and some to the west, and there are all sorts of rumors, which I can't corroborate or talk about, that even people like the board of Gazprom are exiting the country. So there is obviously a lot going on. We know that Putin has, and it's been in the press for a couple of days, Putin has arrested or sacked 150 members of the security services. And I heard just before I came on that apparently 20 generals have been sacked as well. So whether that's because of Moskva or whether that's because of the rest of Ukraine, I have no idea. But obviously there's activity in Moscow as we speak. We'll probably find out more in the next coming couple of days.
Well, Glenn, thanks for the around the world view of Ukraine as always this week. And I'm going to dig into one specific battle. And Dave, feel free after this to jump in or ask about other things. Specifically, well, first let's go to the ship, because you're a Brit and the Navy's obviously the most important service in the British world.
Was.
But the sinking of the ship, Moskva, was the same ship that on the first day of the war went to Snake Island and was famously told by the Ukrainian sailors where to go, to the bottom of the sea with some colorful language. And that's actually now a postage stamp in Ukraine of a Ukrainian soldier giving the middle finger to the ship. And now there's a new version of the stamp which shows the ship on fire, which I think is apropos. But the symbolism of this, because it's a huge loss, is first day of the war, Ukrainians desperate position, thought they'd been killed. Actually, it turns out the sailors were captured, but fought valiantly. And then in the second instance here, or in the second version of that ship making the news, it's getting sunk. And it's really an analogy, I think, for where we are in the war, which is Ukrainians just keep getting better and better. They've got their anti-ship missiles that, by the way, these Neptune missiles, these are not British missiles. These are Ukrainian organic developed missiles, which scares the heck out of Russia, because I think they traveled 60 nautical miles to hit the ship. It wasn't right off of Odessa. This was a long-range missile shot that went and got them. And this is really a huge black eye, and I think emblematic of the overall trajectory of the war. So the symbolism of these kind of events, I think, is hard to understate, actually. What are your thoughts on that, David and Glenn?
Well, yeah, it's huge. Reducing any Russian maritime capability in the Black Sea, because we're fairly confident Turkey is blocking access to the Black Sea in and out at the Bosphorus. Russia has limited assets in the Black Sea to begin with the Black Sea fleet. It's not like the Baltic fleet. It's really not believed to be nuclear capable, but you never rule that out. The subs that are in the Black Sea, the ones we know of, 6 of them, they're diesel powered. They're not nuclear subs. So what they do have there, aside from the Moskva, which may or may not be at the bottom of the Black Sea, DOD came out today and said it's limping. It's not sunk, but it is deep. It's crippled. It's debilitated. But it's really hard to tell too, because the weather on the Black Sea for the past week has been atrocious. So that's probably another thing that really scares the crap out of the Russians is in these weather conditions. At that range, Ukraine was able to take an organic weapon system and hit that target twice. So that's a heck of a capability that wasn't really anticipated. It's a great shot.
Well, Russia knew that Ukraine was developing this capability. It wasn't supposed to be ready until spring, and maybe they just assumed it wasn't there because it hadn't been used. But this is a huge confirmation that technology is working.
Yeah, and I just pulled up, what I had Russia within the Black Sea before this started, and really it's not. They don't have a lot of capability. You're looking at like 30 ships total.
I think this is 1/4 of their missile launch capability is from one ship.
6 subs, 6 guided missile frigates, 6 littoral corvettes, 6 deep water corvettes, 7 landing ships, right? So a lot of it's like LCAC type of capability that initially I thought was designed to move ground forces from Crimea into Odessa, and that really never occurred. But the preponderance of their ships here are not missile capable. It's a small portion of them.
And Glenn, this probably rules out if it wasn't already ruled out, an amphibious landing in Odessa, I would imagine.
Well, I thought when they lost that 2 ships in Berdyansk 2 weeks ago, I reckon
they would have learned.
That they should have learned a lesson that it's not a good idea to get in close. They could land right around the coast, further over by Romania.
Mm-hmm.
And that still remains an option. But I mean, even going there, they're still going to now, if Ukraine has got more missiles, which of course it might not, those might be the only 2. There may be, but I'm pretty sure that they're not the only 2 they're going to have, because I'm pretty sure they're going to make some more. But they might be the only 2 for now. But I mean, once the Ukrainians, the Marines there get the British missiles, then the delivery of stuff from Britain has been phenomenally quick. In every instance, it's actually shocked me. I mean, we've been practicing sort of being able to deploy quickly for a long time, and of course, I mean, we shifted lots for the first Gulf War. We went to the Falklands and things. So there's a bit of history in the doing it. But this has really quite surprised me how quickly they've done it. And if they actually get those missiles to people in the next few days, then I'm sorry, but any landing is going to be an opposed landing and opposed landings are always bloody, and they're on a chance that it'll just not even reach the shore, because they don't have enough capacity for bombarding the shore to actually to get rid of things like people in cellars and guns that are behind buildings and things like this, just waiting to come round the side for when they get in a bit closer. So
It's
no,
it's
yeah,
al- it's almost getting to the point where you're wondering if that naval marine infantry force from that Russia's holding off the coast or in Crimea is going to be redeployed
for
just
land.
on land.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's one rumor that I've heard, that they were going to deploy them for land ops because they were actually better at small teamwork than the army was. But I mean, okay, the first we'll hear of that is when they appear somewhere and appear somewhere as dead bodies, and that the Ukrainians actually say, "We found look what we've found. They're sailors."
Wherever they go, we'll hear about it soon because they'll be fed into the fight, and the Ukrainians, no matter where Russians are, seem to be killing and identifying the soldiers they're working
Well, I mean, they're
against.
not. I mean, the remarkable thing is that, I mean, when you say killing and identifying, I mean, they are actually identifying by name virtually every soldier. And I mean, that this is for wartime. I mean, this is hugely unusual to be able to actually to pin down units, to pin down people, to pin down where they've come from, their families, everything about it.
Well, they have a spreadsheet of 120,000 soldiers apparently that someone, I guess, in the S1 shop leaked or sent a spreadsheet unclassified somewhere in Ukraine, got it, and I think they have all the personal details of everyone, and therefore they're getting their phone numbers. It's probably not hard to find, understanding where they are, probably getting their cell phone signals. It's really quite remarkable and scary as a military person, understand those capabilities are being employed, but Ukraine's doing it expertly. Last week, when the images of Bucha came out where Russian soldiers were shipping home 61 kilograms of clothes, they said, hey, this guy on Twitter stole 61 kilograms, sent it home to this address. That's got to be unnerving for those soldiers and maybe makes them think twice about, well, I don't know if they're thinking twice about looting or doing what they're doing, but it certainly can't give them comfort at night to know that they've been individually identified.
They must. They'll always be wondering if someone's going to come and get them.
And, I would be worried too.
Which I think that they will. Frankly, I think this is one thing. I mean, there's already you've probably seen quite a bit of talk about in the social media about we're going to have to create our own sort of Mossad group after the war to go and find these people, and that needs to be put a lot more public. That this is going to happen. It's the sort of thing that needs to get into the Russian media.
Zelensky is actually saying after the war we're going to be a much bigger version of Israel in Europe, which I think is a pretty apt analogy. And Ukraine's basically come to the conclusion when the peace happens, as long as Putin or other people are in power of his mindset, which, let's face it, this is not just him. This is Silovki, the powerful men in Russia that run Russia, get rich off the state and run the security apparatus.
Yeah.
They're probably going to take over if Putin leaves, and any peace will be a chance to just get ready for potential next round. And that's where Ukraine, I think, the whole government's thinking post-war, this is not going to be a demilitarized operation for sure. Glenn, I wanted to go over to Mariupol quickly because there's been a lot of news recently out of there, a lot of rumors. And one of the interesting things that came up was there was a British Marine, Aiden, who was captured. He's now been paraded, photos of him in Donetsk, occupied part of Donetsk, the DHR or whatever they call it. And There were some Marines that did surrender. The Russians claimed 1,000, but they only showed on video a half, 30 or 40 of them. But other Marines fought through the city to the steel plant, where the Azov steel factory, where the Azov battalion is. And this reminds me a lot. Historical analogies are never perfect, never repeats itself, but history rhymes, of the Battle of Stalingrad in 1942-43. And I think a lot of people have been saying for weeks now, Mariupol is going to fall any day or this week. I'm actually not so sure, because Zelensky's made some statements that lead me to believe that Ukraine hasn't yet given up on relieving the siege. And you talked about some possible troop movements south. And a factory that's being defended by guys like the Azov, who are not willing to surrender, and the Marines who've apparently in the Marines, there were some soldiers who decided to fight their way out. Some decided to try to escape and got captured towards friendly lines up in Zaporozhye. There was a very interesting video between the Azov battalion commander and the Marine, one of the Marine battalion commanders, talking about, listen, we're not surrendering. We broke through. We're going to fight together. And it seems like they're getting resupplied somehow, either capturing ammunition from killed soldiers, but also there's been some rumors of covert special operation resupplies. And I think even a week and a half ago, there was a helicopter shot down that apparently had some deputy commander for Azov. I'm not so sure Mariupol will fall, given the performance of the Russian troops. And I'm also not so sure it won't be relieved, or at least there'll be an attempt to relieve it. What are your thoughts, Glenn and Dave, on that?
It's really difficult because, I mean, you saw the comments during the week from both Azov and from the Marines saying that there'd been no contact, and there was a lot of clear political unhappiness about the fact that the politicians have been sort of put on the spot about this, and that the supreme commander had not been doing his job was the suggestion, and you heard that the chief of defense Zaluzhny actually sort of came out and saying we're doing our best, we're doing everything we can, which was obviously to draw a line under it and try and cut the criticism away from Zelensky. But it is quite clear from just the number of comments coming out from there, because these guys are actually they're on social media a lot, because Elon Musk has arranged it so that they can get on social media. So they are actually speaking every day to family and friends. That is, those that are alive. So there's a lot of unhappiness from them that they're not being supported, that there hasn't been an attempt that there hasn't been an attempt we know about to try and relieve them. Now, your point about some things getting in, that is what I've heard. I mean, some equipment, but okay. So it is where it is. They can fight, like you say. I mean, they're not about to give in, but they can only fight if they've got ammunition. And there's no fighting. And if ammunition runs out, then that's it. I don't care who they are, Azov or anybody. You've got to have ammunition to be able to fight. But I'm absolutely sure that this lot will fight to the last round of ammunition. And even with the last round, they'll go out and try and hunt for some more, because that's the way that they are. So your comment about whether it will fall, I mean, we just can't judge this. I mean, this is the sort of thing where you wake up in the morning and it's fallen, or you wake up in the morning and they're still going. I mean, you and I, neither of us know how much ammunition they've got. The good bit about that is probably nor do the Russians, and therefore, they're, if the Russians don't know, they're always going to be slightly more hesitant about a major attack than if they think that the guys are literally down on their last bullets. It's a good question about relief for Mariupol. It's a good question whether the general staff will feel that saving Mariupol is a greater priority than blocking the possible link up round the back of Donbass, or having a reserve if Donbass gets fractured. So these are big decisions for the general staff, and I don't envy them. The only thing that I would say that in my mind, that if they relieve Mariupol, then I think the game is up for the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that's why it could be attractive. Because if that happens,
yeah, I mean, I see two things that would upset everything. The first one is a hard drive on Crimea, because if they did that and split those two groups and got down to the Crimea, if it looks as though they're going to block Crimea, there's an awful lot of soldiers going to pack up and run. And not only that, just about everybody in Crimea that's Russian is going to pack up and run. So that in strategic terms, getting across the bridge into Crimea is a biggie. Getting at Mariupol, recapturing that is a biggie. But both of those require dash and elan and I say pattern type operations, which we haven't seen anything of so far. We've only seen what the boys are good at is small team operations, stubborn defense, and like picking the enemy off bit by bit by bit by bit. And that is completely different from the other two, is my thought.
Dave, anything you see on Mariupol?
Well, and I'll kind of go with Scott's question up there, talking about the weather. The weather is not good for the next 7 to 10 days. It's still heavily overcast. We're looking at 5 days of rain out of the next 7, with some really heavy rain.
Mud.
Yeah, mud.
Glorious mud.
Temperatures 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit is a high, so that's 5 to 10 degrees Celsius, and associated low, 5 to 10, 0 to 5, and then a low of like 32 to 40 Fahrenheit, right? So the weather favors the defender in the city. In an urban terrain, that weather favors the defender. So that
especially with air cover, with overcast for bombing.
Right. It degrades air cover. It degrades rotary wing, fixed wing. It degrades your ability to fire indirect fires, rocket and cannon artillery accurately, because the MET data is complicated. Are the Russians actually inputting MET and when they're building a firing solution for their rocket and cannon artillery? Probably not. They're not disciplined enough to zero their dang rifle. Are they disciplined enough to actually fire their artillery systems correctly to most accurate data in them? No. And because that data is complicated, it complicates the firing solution. So it's degrading anything they're flying through the sky, anything they're shooting through the sky at a high ordinate. So all that really for the next week is going to benefit Ukrainian defenders. And I think it's a really good thing that the Marine Brigade and Azov have linked up, because now they can build mutually supporting fires, right? Which is something that really hasn't happened to this point, right? Because about 48 hours ago when they started linking up, and I saw the commanders' video together. Now they can actually start to build an integrated defense and coordinate sectors of fire and coordinate movements within those two units. And that's only going to continue to benefit the Ukrainian defense. But as you've also talked through here, what complicates this is resupply. And I understand the messaging from a unit commander perspective, saying we're not getting what we need, but it's also potentially damaging when you put that out in social media and everyone in the world can read it, that you're calling out your strategic leaders, your civilian leadership, right? So I understand it. I'm not saying I haven't done something similar in my military career, because Sam, you know me, and I have a lot.
We've all done it. We've all done
right?
it.
We've all done something like this. And are you really achieving the effect that you want by doing this, or are you exacerbating a problem? So without knowing the inner workings and interpersonal relationships there, I can't answer that question. But I'm cautious.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them one bit. I'm sure both sides, the Ukrainian leadership, are trying their best, and I'm sure that the soldiers there who are losing friends and comrades daily, commanders there, feel abandoned, and that's a natural feeling, and they should speak their perspective as much as they can get it out, because that's Zelensky said Mariupol is the beating heart of Ukraine, and if it stops beating, that's going to drain us a lot. So Zelensky's comment really made me feel like there's something in the works, and I don't know what. But Glenn, I think you brought up some interesting points about movement south, and that actually brings us to the next point, which the main topic of the show is the equipment is starting to flood in from the west, and where is that best redeployed when these armored personnel carriers and tanks from the Czech Republic and Poland get in, the armored personnel carriers from America, the 155 howitzers they're sending? Where do you put it? Because it's clear Russia's trying to reconstitute combat power, as we discussed, and that's not going as quickly as obviously Putin wants it. And there's a window of opportunity to strike. Do you take the bold move and strike in the south, or do you take the more, let's call it, conservative move and reinforce the Donbass in the east? Because the south could be a real knockout blow for Russia, as you pointed out, Glenn. And that's, what do we do with this? What does Ukraine, do with this equipment that's coming in? And, what are the priorities of troop allocation, equipment allocation?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that the sort of the priorities for the sort of armored equipment, it's more important to give new equipment to people that can handle it than it is to worry about which part of the battlefield it goes to, because it. And that's a judgment about which brigade has kept its most coherence and has got maintenance and has got people of quality. That would be a big concern for me as a commander, is knowing which brigade is actually ready for it. Because if you're a brigade that's taken in a whole load of policemen, border guards, special forces, recently joined civilians to add to your numbers, then you're not ready to take any modern equipment at all, and you need to stay pretty much light infantry with the equipment that you've got. So this is going to be a big question. I mean, probably at the moment the best brigade that's ready for it will be 28th Brigade, but that's down south and it's already in combat. Because they've always been good at maintenance and movement. It's something they've done a lot of. So this is a real problem for them. I mean, how do you reconstitute people with that equipment? If you give it to a territorial brigade, you've got a whole load of new training to do for people who aren't even battle ready. So it's history does not have good lessons for things like that. It takes people a long time to actually to do it. I mean, it took people a long time to do these things with simple equipment. But if you're starting to talk about modern artillery and things like that, you need to really give it to the guys that already know what they're doing. Of all of those things, artillery is probably the easiest to change because the guys are not actually on the front line. You can take a new gun, you can park it next to the old one and let the guys play with it for a couple of hours whilst they're still jumping back and firing off the other gun. And then when they say they're ready, you take the old gun away and give it to some new people. But you still need training teams. Where are those training teams going to come? Are they going to pull people out and take them back to Poland so they can get trained in Poland? I have no idea. This is I'm going to say this is a nightmare for the general staff. Frankly, it's a nightmare for anybody that's actually got to reconstitute.
Yeah, it's a problem.
It's a problem, and the more, even more sensible might be to pull out all those foreign soldiers that they've got and put them into some of the new equipment, because lots of those guys will have been in this new equipment or have been in the environment of equipment like that. And they'll be quite happy getting into an armored vehicle, because it won't be their first one. It'll be their third or fourth one. So they'll know what all the bits are. They'll understand how you make it work. This is what I would class it's almost like a manpower problem. Big time, a manpower problem, big time. And they're going to have to do something, and they're going to have to do it quickly, because otherwise the equipment will just not have the value for the battlefield that they want. Dave, what do you think?
New equipment always poses an issue, and I don't care what army it is. When I went from the M1A1 to the M1A2 variant of the Abrams tank, there's a significant learning curve. And it took me a couple of weeks as a fairly educated guy to understand the changes in the fire control system and the onboard embedded diagnostic system and some minor changes to the power plant to really be able to effectively command that tank, to employ the formation as a commander. And that's a first world American Army problem. It took a couple of weeks to do that, and that's out of contact, right? So doing it in contact, is adds a level of complexity. Obviously, the unit training on fielding the new equipment's not doing it in contact, but the general staff is in contact, right? And it's just one more thing you're putting on them. To do this. The other thing that really I'm concerned with is with the influx of large quantities of equipment is the maintenance and logistics that goes to support this influx, right? You can't just give me an APC. You can't give me an MI-17. I need the whole apparatus that comes along with it. And I need to be able to take that logistics train from the end user using that piece of kit in combat with the enemy back through echelons of command and logistics and sustainment and depot and repair. And I'm concerned that it's too much end item and not enough of the logistics train that's really going to be needed.
Yeah. There's a real danger. What Dave says is absolutely right. When we in Britain, when we got Warrior armored fighting vehicle, it was about 15 weeks before people could actually, say that they'd mastered it properly. And even 15 weeks wasn't long enough for the observer variant. The guys needed even longer than that. And I'm just wondering whether the sort of the leadership haven't drunk too much of their own Kool-Aid in thinking how good we are because we've been really clever, and I'm worrying that they can do more than they actually can. And that worries me slightly, because this is not easy. The general staff have not shown historically a great ability to handle this sort of technical work, because they have not been doing it before. It's not like something of a constant re-equipment change like in Britain and America, where the staff is all the time is bringing in the new equipment. constantly bringing in something. I mean, during my 3 years on the Army staff in the artillery, we introduced £2 billion worth of equipment to the UK artillery. 2 billion, 47 different lines of equipment. And you know, so I mean, that used to take all my time, but I knew I was trained to do it. They're not trained to do this. It will be completely new for them.
And this is where you know, maybe the most critical part is not a training team to train the end user, but a kind of fielding team. You know, to augment the general staff and help them so they can focus on war fighting, and they need some kind of augmentation that can really help with the fielding plan and also helping to build that sustainment package.
Yeah, I mean, but even if they get the fielding plan right, understanding the timings, understanding who's going to deliver it, and who's actually going to do the teaching, and how that whole complex thing is going to happen, it's a real monster.
And you also have to recognize you're going to get it wrong.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be 100% because there are units in contact and conditions are going to change.
Yeah.
And so you have to go in this understanding that we plan on fielding whatever set, kit, and outfit that came from Slovakia to this brigade, but the conditions change and you got it wrong. But you're at the point now, it is what it is. And so the general staff has to have the capability and the wherewithal to make a change to their tactical plan.
And their actually new equipment changes the tactics, the doctrine and tactics as well, because you can do things differently. So if you only get a new armored vehicle, clever armored vehicle, and then you just park it at the back, it's you know, you're possibly wasting it. But I mean, it was a real challenge when Humvees came, and I mean, Humvees not a complex beast. And now here we are with things, new guns and things that are complex beasts.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, I as I say, I have less worry about the boys being able to master the stuff because I know that they will. It's just the organization of how you do it, where you do it, and who does the teaching, and where you get the manpower to do it. That's the more complex. Yeah. The staff action around putting these things together is a really complex activity.
This is something that a lot of people, commentators on Twitter, I don't think appreciate and Ukrainian MOD probably itself, the complexities of fielding different equipment. Although I do think we do need to understand that Ukraine MOD, we should defer to ultimately their requests because they are the one in the fight. And if they're motivated to learn new equipment, I think one of the reasons why they want this advanced American kit or Western kit is very simple. This is going to be a long war unless Russia decides to accept way less than what they've been sold as the war aims, which is, I think it's becoming increasingly likely that Donbass is going to be hard to subdue or capture fully, especially by May 9th, which is when Russia is supposed to be able to accept this. And there's going to be a decision point for Putin and Russia, which is when do they shoot the gun and start going full war on this and overtly mobilizing their society, or do they pack it in and call whatever they've got a victory, which could be the capture of Mariupol, where rumor has it, this is, I find quite funny, they want to do a May 9th victory parade in Mariupol, like in which part of the town that hasn't been rubbled. And, you know, they're even telling the residents that are still there, I guess under press-ganged Russian control, hey, let's clean out rubble in certain streets so we can have this parade, which I think would be really interesting if they do the parade and then they get ambushed by a bunch of Marines and Azov guys that are still there waiting for it. Or it's struck by missiles from Ukraine.
Or switchblades.
Neptune missiles, or something.
Yeah.
Which, if they do a parade on the 9th of May, I really that would just be interesting because
Well, even better if Putin comes to watch.
yeah, well, let's hope he gets out of his bunker, but I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
You've gone mute. You've gone quiet, sir.
He's still quiet.
Yeah.
And he's gone to plaid. But I think while Sam's figuring that out, Glenn, it's also Russia has to set conditions, between now to achieve an end state in May 9th. They have a whole set of conditions that they need to set that are not even close to in place yet to get them to a point where they can even continue effectively conducting offensive operations towards Mariupol. And I don't see that they're ready to do it yet.
No, but I mean that I think we've got to be careful of not putting what we see as conditions for something like that, and what they see as conditions. Because
Right.
I mean, clearly, what they're doing is just pushing the horde in the general direction.
Yeah,
it's not. This is not skilled battle fighting, skilled war fighting. This is just take the horde, throw it in the general direction.
It's old Russian doctrine.
It's old Russian way. I think it's even further back than that. I mean, I think we're almost back to sort of the wars in the 1500s. Literally one commander, a senior commander, with as many men as he can get with axes and spears, and just generally going for it, because there's not much more skill been shown so far.
No.
And let's be blunt. I mean, a lot of the infantry attacks that I've seen the videos of is just untrained people. I mean, it's just a man with a rifle who's got no idea of the military art, the skill of being an infantryman at all.
Yeah, there's no movement, there's no maneuver, there's no
fire
cover
and
and
movement, there's no use of cover, there's no
support and assault.
Everything's missing. Everything's missing.
Yeah.
So if you're just sending a horde in, then you don't actually do any prep for that except having more bodies. And as soon as you got more bodies and a brave commander, you kick them in. And I mean, if what I hear, that Putin said it was, the loss of 40,000 to take Donbass or something was perfectly acceptable. Well, he's heading that way already.
Yeah, it's halfway there.
It's halfway there already.
Well, with wounded and missing, they're beyond that. But
they're beyond it. Yeah, KIA, they're halfway there.
It sounds like there's a political imperative which is driving the timetable for May 9th, and that's what's coming. But it also seems, Glenn, that forces are just being piecemeal fed into Izium and other places where they're getting turned back. And there's even a salient. Apparently, Ukrainian forces are trying to cut off the Izium salient, which would be quite a blow to the Russian advance. And if the longer Mariupol holds out, the longer it becomes impossible to make a strong push from the south. With who knows what troops are still available. After you get out of the Battle of Mariupol, are you ready to march north? Probably not.
Yeah.
And it's looking like either Russia and Putin has to decide this is a long war and we need to prepare the nation economically and militarily with mobilization, societally, for a total war, because Ukraine started their total war mobilization 24 February. The whole country's at war. The whole country, as we talk about in the show, is mobilized, volunteering. Everyone's doing their part, and Russia's not doing that. And it reminds me of how in the first 3-4 years of Second World War, amazingly, Germany, because Hitler didn't want to upset the home front, didn't mobilize the entire German economy and industry for the war until 1944-45 under Speer. And that was an amazing just if they would have done what they did in 44 and 45 in 41 or 40, they probably would have won the war.
Yeah. I mean, they carried on with peacetime rates of tank production until about 44, which is truly bizarre. But I mean, here, I mean, Russia's got the problem of zero tank production at the moment.
Yeah, sanctions aren't helping that.
Sanctions aren't helping at all. So, I mean, he's got problems. Okay, so, I mean, all he can do, if he decides he's going to continue this war, as it is at the moment, all he can do is actually increase the horde factor. Not actually go for skill or anything, because he doesn't have any, he can't have that many good lieutenant colonels sitting back there to organize training.
No, they're actually cleaning out staff colleges right now. There was one particular instance where the Ukrainian forces killed a BMP-1, and they went in and they retrieved the 3 bodies, and all 3 of them, Dave, you're going to laugh at this, they were all lieutenants. So these were all 3. Imagine an armor basic course crew from when we used to.
That's exactly what I'm picturing.
Yeah, it's like those were 3 leaders of 30 to 40 person units that all just got killed in one vehicle. And the flower of the officer corps is going to be apparently spent. The seeds of the future officer corps, are going to be spent as cannon fodder. The institutional army of Russia apparently is being cleaned out. Like instructors from all their different schools are being sent to the front. And we did that, to be fair, we did that in Iraq. We did that in Afghanistan when we weren't even nearly fully mobilized like the Russian army is. So they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of force posture, where you put young officers in as foot soldiers who are going to get killed, but instead of becoming officers. It's like they're betting the entire future of Russia on the Donbass.
By May the 9th.
By May the 9th. And as many problems as Ukraine has, Ukraine actually doesn't need all these tanks to go in to hold the Donbass. I mean, it will help for sure, especially the artillery, the switchblades. They need the tanks for the counteroffensive after the Donbass, when they absorb the weight of the offensive, and then are able to identify, well, where should we counterattack? Should we go straight down through Kherson to Crimea or whatever? So it's actually interesting, the timing of all this. Both sides are racing to equip, refit, replenish formations. And I think if you compare the two sides, as bad as it is for Ukraine, the chaos that must be obviously in their armed forces, it's probably the Russian side.
Well, I mean, the good thing about the Ukraine side, the 2 good things. One is the motivation, which is unparalleled.
Everything.
And the second thing is which of course is linked to motivation, but is a separate thing, is it the enthusiasm to actually to get on and do stuff. And so, on getting new equipment, there will be real enthusiasm to do it and to take it and to go and do stuff, to go and kill Russians.
It won't be like Dave and I when we were going through officer basic course and we were, hungover from the night before at Louisville. No, these guys are going to be fully focused on the game.
Yeah, I was there as well. It was, you're right. I mean, they're going to be fully focused, and that sort of, and as I've said before, the maturity level is so much higher. There's so many more people on the Ukrainian side have done stuff. So there are going to be guys that are technical everywhere you go, and it will take them a long time, but it won't take them as long as it would take to give those scroats that are on the Russian side a new piece of equipment.
Well, I would venture to say, Glenn, the Ukrainians will probably learn the new kit quicker than the Russian conscripts or whoever they're feeding in are going to learn their own kit, because I think Russia's just decimating its whatever's left of their officer corps, and I don't think they have a real NCO corps, which is the Achilles heel.
Yeah, and they haven't got NCOs. I mean, I think the way the from what I've seen in the last weeks, is that the Ukrainians will actually take new equipment quicker than we would do in both of our countries. With they may not master it to the level that we do, but I'm pretty sure that they'll get the basics quickly.
I think they'd be a lot quicker than our soldiers, given the existential threat and the motivation. Yeah. And this brings me back to the last point. And Glenn and David, I'd like to finish on this discussion: is the spirit of the Army, or the morale. The most frustrating thing in military and in business and anything in life really is that the intangibles matter the most. Yeah. And in business, I always like to say that the story and marketing is the most important thing, and you can't measure it. The spirit of the Army, the culture of a company, is everything, and it's maddeningly hard to measure it or build it, because that's actually the hardest thing to build in any organization, is that culture, that trust, that commitment to a common cause. And it just seems that it's not getting better for Russia, although there certainly is a galvanization of Russian society. I think when you do take losses, you undergo sanctions. There's a siege mentality that's natural in Russia, but this is like a defensive crouch versus Ukraine literally fighting for their future. And the atrocities, I think, have just done more than ever to galvanize and coalesce the spirit of Ukraine, because they know literally, if we lose, this is an existential thing. This is, I mean, President Biden called it genocide this week, and he got in a little bit of trouble with his quote unquote advisors, but morally everyone understands that he's right, and he was actually ahead of his time, because he called it before Bucha in Poland. Unofficially, he's saying what needs to be said. Official policy, of course, can't be that Putin needs to go, because if that's a war aim, then this is a much larger war. But the spirit seems to be really, I think, what's going to carry the day. And this is going to be interesting coming into the next 4.5 weeks, going to 9 May. Mm-hmm. So, Dave, I'll let you.
Yeah. What I think is interesting there too, like what I already mentioned the commanders of Azov and the Marine Brigade, and their soldiers have to believe in those commanders are going to do everything in their power to take care of them, and that goes a long way. When the men believe you actually care, and you're willing to put your career, your name, your well-being, your life on the line for them, that really begins to, galvanize and build the trust in an organization. That's something I always strive to do in any leadership position, right? And we've all had those bosses, those commanders we work for in the Army, where you're like, I am not going to die for this dude. Or there's another guy, I will follow this guy through the gates of hell. You've had both.
Yeah.
And I believe right now there are more of the commanders that you would follow through the gates of hell leading in Ukraine.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There are more of those guys than the other.
Look at the president. Look at the presidents, the mayors, the governors across Ukraine.
The civilian leadership even has that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, I said this, and I remember the third day of this show or broadcast that we do, and second day of the war, when Zelensky said, "I need ammunition, not a ride," I said that he's won the war, because ultimately I never doubted from all my friends in Ukraine that they would. I just thought, and I'll admit this, I thought they're going to have to fight an insurgency. No one, I think, Glenn, you and I were discussing our concerns before the war started about the big picture logistic coordination of the general staff. No one was sure that the organization of the Army and the president on down would hold. We all knew the boys would fight. But that's coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the point that I would add is that I always look at this for any military unit in a very simple term. Does the boss need to be there? And does the organization function well when the boss is there, as well when the boss is not there as it does when he's there? In fact, does it even function better when he's not there, because the pride of the organization wants them to actually to show the boss how good they are even when he's not there? And the beauty of the Ukrainian system, and it's I should say, well done to the international community, is actually having trained so many good sergeants and sergeant majors who can step in to those officer roles and are stepping into those officer roles. But the Russians haven't got that, and there's a problem. You lose the officer on the Russian side, and then you go into a void, and it's a void of probably of not doing anything or running away. And this is a huge fundamental difference, and that's one of the reasons why the Ukrainians will win, even if it takes them a long time. Is the quality of leadership and the quality of junior leadership, and also the quality of people coming into the forces in general is just so much higher than the Russian side. So I'm positive. I just have that horrible feeling it may still get worse before it gets better. But that's war.
I think that's what we're all afraid of. And I'll just end with a few thoughts and things for the audience. Is look, the Borderlands stories from Ukraine is a live broadcast that we've been doing since the beginning of the war. And Dave and Glenn, thank you for making this weekly summary of what's going on in Ukraine on the military side. Really successful. A lot of people are interested in your thoughts, and I thank you both for coming. Just wanted to remind everyone who's watching this that we at Borderlands Foundation, it's a registered nonprofit in America and in Europe. We're putting this information out to help Ukraine through the war, build during the war, support people from Ukraine, and then rebuild after the war for as long as that takes. And we are coming out very soon, and I'm waiting on the developers to finish it, an application where you can directly donate money to people from Ukraine and only just pay the transaction fee of that and get it straight to them and speak to them and know they got the money and they're using it, right? And we're also, with our team, are going to vet every single person we put on there who needs help to make sure that it's not a scam account, it's a real person. And we're also going to vet anyone who offers help, who wants to offer housing or transportation. We're going to make sure it's not involved in bad activities, trafficking, or trying to prey on people who need help in that respect. So that's what we're building at the foundation. And we put out this information for free just to give you a very informed and I think amazing insights from two amazing officers that I both have a lot of respect for. Dave and I served in the Army together. We were classmates at the Armor Officer Basic Course and the Captain's Course. And Glenn, by the way, was roaming the streets of Belfast when I was a little boy there as one of the British soldiers I used to look up to, because I was on the wrong side of the fence or the right side, depending on where you're standing. And just wanted to thank both of you for all that you're doing to educate people, inform people, and also provide amazing content that represents our foundation we're trying to build to help Ukraine through the war. So thanks, Dave. Thanks, Glenn. And look forward to next week.
My pleasure.
We'll see how the Battle of Donbass is starting to take shape.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. If you want to donate, the links are right below the show to the Borderlands Foundation. Or if you want to wait for the app when it comes out to donate directly to people, we will send you information when it comes straight out. So thank you very much. Bye.
Okay.